The spirit of adventure and exploration was a powerful force in the 19th century. It was not absent among theological students. 3 young men and a professor at the Seminary of the Reformed Church in America dreamed of ministering in Arabia. In 1889, those dreams began to take shape with the founding of the Arabian Mission and the organization of a support base. James Cantine and Samuel Zwemer then went to Syria to study Arabic. Later, they explored the coasts of the Arabian Peninsula and the Gulf region. They ultimately settled in Basra, Iraq, in August of 1891. From there, Sam Zwemer made his first trips to Bahrain in 1893. With limited medical knowledge, Samuel Zwemer did what he could, but recognized the need for qualified doctors. In late 1893, he wrote, "The need of a medical missionary here is second only to the claim of Basra. In the whole island, with some 50,000 people, there is no doctor. In a place where dentistry is practiced by the use of wedges, hammers, and tongs, and where they fill a hollow tooth with melted lead to ease pain, I have won a score of friends by less painful methods." Doctors joined the Arabian mission and visited Bahrain, but the lack of a proper hospital limited what they could do. Sam Zwemer carried on as best he could. At the end of 1894, he wrote, "If I tell you that I have been called to treat fractures, gunshot wounds, acute mania, cystitis, pneumonia, and other diseases beyond all household remedies and layman diagnosis, I need not urge the absolute necessity of a medical missionary here. The responsibility and anxiety is too much for one not qualified." Things improved somewhat when Samuel Zwemer married Amy Wilkes, a nurse with the Church Missionary Society in Baghdad. The couple settled in Bahrain in 1896, and Amy turned her attention to lady patients and advised her husband in the care of men. In 1900, a married couple, both physicians, arrived in Bahrain. Doctors Sharon and Marion Wells Tomes were recent graduates from Michigan in the USA. With joy and relief, Sam Zwemer wrote, "On September 11th, Dr. S.J. Tomes came to Bahrain from Basra to take up the medical work and make it more worthy of that name than it has hereto been in the hands of a layman." Dr. Sharon Tomes began work 2 days after his arrival. It proved to be an eventful first day. He had just finished the morning dispensary work when he was brought a pearl diver who had encountered a hungry shark. Sam Zwemer gave the anesthetic, while Dr. Tomes and an assistant did what was necessary to clean and dress the wounds. When the man awoke, he insisted on going home. When seen 12 days later, the diver was recovering well, and his family was duly grateful. He was probably the first patient ever to undergo anesthetic surgery in Bahrain. The doctors Tomes initially worked in and from the house occupied by the mission, but this house was far from satisfactory. Dr. Marion Wells Tomes compiled a summary of their first 3 months' experience in Bahrain and concluded it by saying, "Beside these, there have been a large number of minor surgical procedures, and our need of a hospital has been many times emphasized. You can well understand how unsatisfactory it is to send a patient away after operation, knowing he has no better place to go than a tent, which may become so thoroughly soaked that he has no dry place in which to lie, to say nothing of a clean one." In 1901, after prolonged negotiations, His Highness Sheikh Isa bin Ali al-Khalifa, the ruler of Bahrain, sold the missionaries a plot of land outside Manama for the sum of 4,000 rupees. The family of Alfred DeWitt Mason from New York City donated 6,000 US for construction of a hospital. A Bahrain-style, purpose-built structure rose on the site. This lovely new building excited all sorts of conjecture. Sharon Tomes wrote, "The natives cannot believe that this new house, which is so much better than the mission house, is to be used only for sick Arabs and not for us to live in. Even though they have been told so often that it is entirely their house, they persist in believing that at least the doctor will live in it and allow sick people to sleep in the rooms he does not need." The hospital was completed within 1902 and occupied in the final months of that year. At the beginning of the following year, the missionaries gathered in Bahrain for their annual meeting. John Van Ness later reported, "Where a year ago were mat huts, now stands that magnificent building, that glorious monument to the generosity of the Mason family. Like the Savior's arms, its doors are always open to receive the sick in body. And like the Savior, too, those in charge try to give healing for the body, and best of all, healing for the soul as well. On Sabbath, January 26th, the hospital was dedicated to God and Arabia. Mr. Zwemer made the address, and Mr. Cantine offered the dedicatory prayers. And now this hospital is an evidence that we intend to stay in Arabia, and while we stay, we will spread ourselves." In its early months, the hospital enjoyed a regular flow of both male and female patients. However, the outbreak of smallpox followed by plague in the spring of 1903 led some people to spread rumors that the missionaries had poisoned the local wells. In time, trust returned, and the patients with it. Not only did the people of Bahrain seek out the services of Mason Memorial Hospital, but others also came from Qatar, Al-Hassa, Nejd, and southern Iran. This, in turn, led to a pattern of visits to neighboring countries throughout the first half of the 20th century. The missionaries traveled by boat from Manama to Qatif, Dareen, and Uqair on the Saudi coast. From Uqair, it was a day-long trip on donkeyback to the oasis of Hofuf. After a rest in Hofuf, it was 5 to 7 days by camel to Riyadh, the most frequent inland destination. On occasion, trips were extended as far north as Hail and as far west as Taif. In later years, cars were substituted for donkeys and camels, and eventually motor launches were used to cross the sea. In the final years, airplanes even came into the picture. But in spite of these superficial changes, the missionaries always worked under trying conditions as there were no permanent hospitals. The missionaries, like the people they served, suffered from frequent illnesses and some died. In its first decade, the Arabian mission lost 3 of its young recruits. During the summer of 1904, all 4 of the Zwemer children were stricken with measles. As they were recovering, 2 of the girls developed dysentery and died. In April of 1905, Dr. Marion Wells Tomes succumbed to typhoid. Dr. Sharon Tomes transferred to Muscat in 1907 and died there as the result of an accident in 1913. However, others came to carry on the work. In addition to those from the West, doctors and nurses were recruited from India. Many Bahrainis joined the hospital staff and were trained in medical disciplines. More stations were opened. The work in Bahrain expanded, and a second hospital was built specifically for women and children and named in honor of Dr. Marion Wells Tomes. By the late 1950s, the Mason Memorial Hospital had completed its useful life. funds were raised locally, and ground was broken in 1960. New buildings were completed, and the new complex was opened under the name American Mission Hospital by His Highness the late Emir Sheikh Isa bin Salman Al Khalifa in April 1962. However, the hospital hit upon hard times in the 1970s. Aging facilities and new competitors all exacted a price. In the early 1980s, the local board of managers and the administration instituted a number of cost-cutting measures and gradually restored the hospital's financial health. In 1988, new leadership was installed and measures were implemented to stimulate growth. Urgent care services were made available 24 hours a day, 7 days a week. Dentistry and other medical services were added. Over the ensuing 15-year period, the hospital has grown fourfold. Also in 1988, the hospital completed 85 years as a direct ministry of the Reformed Church in America, and, by ministerial decree, was reorganized as a not-for-profit Bahrain society governed by a board of directors drawn from the local community. The directors serve as volunteers having no financial interest in the hospital, but are very much focused on the scope and quality of services provided. An aggressive fundraising program was instituted in 1997. The late ruler kindly donated a substantial sum, signaling the community to support the hospital. The then Crown Prince, now His Majesty King Hamad bin Isa Al Khalifa, made his private golf course available to the American Association of Bahrain and American Mission Hospital for the AAB AMH Island Classic Charity Golf Tournament. This program succeeded in raising over 1 million dinars to construct the AMH 2000 building. This represents the first phase of the reconstruction of American Mission Hospital. Also in 2000, the new SAR Medical and Dental Center was opened, an ambulatory care facility in a location more convenient for people residing in northwest Bahrain. The board of directors, the administration, and the staff of American Mission Hospital thank the community of Bahrain for the privilege we have had to serve the people of this island and the region for over 100 years. And we look forward to another century of medical progress and expanding services as we develop and improve our ability to care for you.